All right, hello and welcome. Today we are diving into the mind of a true literary master, someone who completely changed the game when it comes to scary stories. We're talking about the kind of fear that really gets under your skin and, well, it just stays there.
Have you ever thought about that? Why do we love to be scared? It's this weird human thing, right? That thrill you get from a ghost story that sends chills down your spine? We all do it. We huddle up, whisper, and actually enjoy being terrified.
I bet a lot of you remember these. You know, those schoolyard legends, the ghost in the third-floor bathroom, or maybe those statues in the park that were definitely moving when you weren't looking. That shared experience of being absolutely terrified was, let's be honest, kind of fun.
Okay, but here's the thing. For most of history, scary stories worked in a very different way. The monster was always, it was always out there, something external, a ghost, a demon, an angry god. The danger was never inside. And then, everything changed. There was this huge shift. The source of all that terror, it moved. It went from the outside world right into the twisted, dark corners of the human mind. Suddenly, the horror was coming from inside us. And this is what we call psychological horror. It's this idea that the scariest monster isn't under your bed, it's not in your closet. Nope. The most terrifying monster is the one living inside your own head, the one whispering all the things you don't want to hear. So, who's the guy who pioneered all this? Who was the absolute master who first took us on a tour of that dark, creepy cellar of the human psyche? Well, let's meet him. We are talking about Edgar Allan Poe. He was an American writer, and to put it lightly, his life was pretty tragic and chaotic. And all that darkness, it basically became the ink he used to write his incredible stories.
Just look at his life. It was just this constant cycle of loss and hardship. He was orphaned when he was just a toddler. He married his young cousin and then had to watch her die slowly from tuberculosis. He struggled with poverty and alcohol his entire life. So yeah, all of that profound darkness, it absolutely 100% shaped everything he wrote.
So, to really get a feel for how he did this, let's dive into two of his most famous stories. This is where we can see him perfecting the art of psychological horror. First up, we've got The Black Cat. Now, this is way more than just a story about a guy and his pet. It's really a confession, told in the first person. We get a front row seat to watch a man's soul just decay, all from his own completely twisted point of view. So as we go through the story, you see his actions just get worse and worse, escalating from animal cruelty to flat-out murder. And the whole time, he's trying to convince us, and probably himself, that he's perfectly sane. He blames the booze, he blames this weird spirit of perverseness, he blames literally anything but himself. And the ending is just classic Poe. It's the cat. The one he accidentally walled up with his wife's body. That's what gives him away. His downfall doesn't come from some brilliant detective, nope. It comes from the consequences of his own evil, literally screaming from behind a wall.
All right, let's move on to case study number 2, The Telltale Heart. Now in this one, the narrator isn't fueled by rage or alcohol. His motivation is way creepier. It's this super specific, chilling obsession with an old man's weird, pale blue eye.
And he is so meticulous. He plans and carries out what he thinks is the perfect murder. He's so proud of how clever he is. But there's one thing he just can't escape: the sound of his own guilt.
And that's the absolute key to this story. That sound, that beating heart, it's not real. It can't be. It's all in his head, a hallucination. It's his own conscience, the thing he thought he could just kill and bury, coming back to haunt him and expose him. And that, right there, is the genius of Poe. The killer's own mind becomes the detective, the star witness, and the judge, all rolled into one. He literally convicts himself. How brilliant is that? Okay, but Poe's influence is way bigger than just horror stories. The guy was a total innovator. He basically invented entire genres and tools for storytelling that we still use all the time today.
Seriously, think about it. The unreliable narrator, that character telling the story where you're like, can I really trust this person? The intense focus on someone's psychological breakdown, that deep dive into the mind of a criminal. These are everywhere now, right? In thrillers and mysteries. And it all started with Poe.
And get this, before there was Sherlock Holmes, there was C. Auguste Dupin. That was Poe's brilliant, kind of weird detective who solved crimes using pure logic.
So every single time you binge watch a crime show or get hooked on a mystery novel, you are literally experiencing a legacy that Poe kicked off.
His impact even stretches into science. His obsession with exploring the subconscious mind, all those hidden desires, the deep-seated guilt, the madness, it actually came before guys like Sigmund Freud. You could say he was doing a kind of literary psychoanalysis, long before it was even a thing.
So it's really no surprise when modern horror masters like Stephen King say stuff like this. King calls Poe his spiritual father. And it makes perfect sense. The DNA of Poe's writing it's woven into pretty much every scary story that's been written since.
And that's really the big takeaway from Poe, isn't it? His ultimate, chilling message, that the most haunted place in the world isn't some old house, it's the human heart. The real horror isn't the monster chasing you, it's the darkness you might be carrying around inside yourself. And Poe's work kind of forces you to ask yourself that question, right? It makes you wonder what strange stories, what little bits of guilt, what weird obsessions might be playing out, silently, inside your own head.
Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.
All right, let's get into it. We're looking at two absolute masters of horror, Edgar Allan Poe from the West and Pu Songling from the East. Now, both of them wrote stories that have been terrifying people for centuries, but they did it in ways that are worlds apart, and that really tells you something about where they came from.
Because that's the big question here, isn't it? Horror is so much more than just things that go bump in the night. The really good stuff, the stories that stick with you, they're like a cultural X-ray. They show you what a society is truly afraid of, whether it's the darkness lurking inside our own minds or the corruption in the very systems we're supposed to trust.
So let's set the stage for this showdown. In one corner, you've got the American master of psychological dread, Edgar Allan Poe, and in the other, the Chinese chronicler of supernatural justice, Pu Songling. Their ideas of terror couldn't be more different, and that's exactly what makes putting them side by side so fascinating.
We're going to kick things off with Poe, who is pretty much the architect of modern psychological horror. See, for Poe, the most terrifying monsters aren't hiding under your bed or in a dark alley. Nope, they're already inside your head. His stories are these claustrophobic dives straight into madness, guilt, and obsession.
And you want to see Poe at his best? Look no further than his chilling masterpiece, The Cask of Amontillado. The whole thing is told by this guy, Montresor, who's decided to get the perfect revenge on his friend Fortunato. And why? For some insult. But here's the kicker. We never, ever find out what it was. And that not knowing, that's a huge part of what makes it so creepy. I mean, just look at how chillingly methodical this is. This isn't some crime of passion. Oh no. This is a cold, calculated, four-step recipe for revenge. He starts by being super friendly. Then, he uses Fortunato's own pride as a wine expert against him. He picks the perfect time, the chaos of Carnival, so there are no witnesses. And then, he leads him to a place where there is absolutely no way out.
And Poe is a master of setting the scene, right? So picture this. They're going deeper and deeper into these family crypts, with the bones of generations literally lining the walls. Fortunato is drunk, and get this, he's dressed as a jester, a fool, totally clueless that he's walking into his own grave. And then bam, the trap is sprung. He's chained to the wall. And then, as Montserrat is laying the bricks, sealing him in one by one, we get this exchange that will just send a shiver down your spine. Fortunato screams out this desperate plea, and Montserrat just echoes it back with this ice-cold mockery. It's pure psychological torture. The cruelty is just as suffocating as the tomb itself.
And just when you think it can't get any worse, he drops the final bomb. He tells us that 50 years have gone by, and nobody has ever found the body. He got away with it perfectly. And that final line, "May he rest in peace," wow. It's the ultimate dark punchline to a story where the bad guy doesn't just win, he wins and sleeps like a baby for the rest of his life.
So the big takeaway here, with Poe, the horror is always coming from inside your own head. He's got this other story, William Wilson, where it's even clearer. It's about a guy who's haunted by his double, who's actually his own conscience. And when he finally kills the double, he realizes he's just killed himself.
Now, if that sounds familiar, yeah, it should. It's the same basic idea you see decades later in movies like Fight Club or Split.
Okay, let's totally switch gears now and head east to Pu Songryeong and his enormous collection of stories. Here, horror isn't about one person's mind breaking down. No, this is about the entire system breaking down and what happens when the supernatural world has to step in and play judge, jury, and executioner.
And a perfect example of this is the tale of Sakbang-pyeong. Forget inner demons. This is about a devoted son who literally marches into the afterlife to sue the corrupt bureaucracy of the dead because they wrongly condemned his father. The horror here? It's systemic. It's injustice.
And the journey this guy goes on, it's just incredible. He starts at the local level with the city god. No luck, he's been bribed. So he goes up the chain to the district magistrate, also corrupt. So he goes all the way to the top to King Yama, the lord of the underworld himself. And not only is he on the take, but he has the poor guy tortured for even trying. But does he give up? No way. He takes his case to the absolute highest power there is, the Jade Emperor.
And the climax is so satisfying. The Jade Emperor basically sends in the celestial equivalent of internal affairs. This agent rounds up every single corrupt official from King Yama all the way down. Their crimes are read out for all to hear, and the punishment is absolute. We're talking a complete factory reset on their souls. They're never allowed to be human again. It all comes down to this core idea called Gwansan-jing-ak, which basically means good is rewarded and evil gets punished. Period. In this universe, justice isn't just an idea. It's a fundamental law.
All right, so let's put these two masters head to head. When you do, you start to see these two totally different blueprints for what we're afraid of and why.
This chart really lays it all out, doesn't it? For Poe, the fear is all in your head. It's madness, it's obsession, it's guilt. And justice? Forget about it. The bad guy totally wins. The horror is personal. It's suffocating. But for Pu Songryeong, the fear is out there. It's a broken, unfair system. But here's the key difference. In his world, justice always wins in the end. The moral order gets restored, and you get a real sense of closure.
And what's really wild is how these centuries-old fears are still everywhere today. You can draw a straight line from Poe's idea of the divided self to movies like Fight Club. Meanwhile, Pu Songryeong's whole vision of a bureaucratic afterlife, that's the entire plot of the huge Korean blockbuster series Along with the Gods. And get this, he even wrote a story about a guy who could draw a door on a wall to travel anywhere. Sound familiar? Yep. He basically invented the Anywhere door from Doraemon.
So this brings us to the big question, right? Why are we still talking about these stories hundreds of years later? What is their secret sauce?
Well, I think it boils down to this. They each tap into a fundamental human fear. Poe holds up a mirror and basically says the monster might be you. He makes us confront our own internal chaos. Pu Songryeong, on the other hand, looks at our fear of an unfair world, of systemic injustice, and he builds this cosmic courtroom to reassure us that, in the end, everyone gets what they deserve.
And that really just leaves us with one final thought to chew on. Both of these guys used horror to explore the biggest anxieties of their time. So it makes you wonder, 100 years from now, when people look back at the scary movies, the books, the video games we're making right now, what are they going to learn about us?